I want to welcome everyone to this event. It's Ed Leaders Live here, and we're going to be discussing the profile of a graduate. But before we dive into it, I want to invite people, if you'd like to comment on social media and join the conversation that way, you can use the following hashtags: TE Virtual Events or TEVE. So my name is John Scroggie, and I'm an account executive with Thoughtexchange, and it's my pleasure to introduce Melissa Creech of Glenbard. And so Melissa is the Director of Instructional Technology at Glenbard, and I'm going to go and read through this slide because I was always told if you're going to put a slide with a lot of information on it, you better read through it. So Glenbard is located in the western suburbs of Chicago and has 8,100 students at 4 high schools. Melissa supports digital curriculum at Glenbard and provides professional development for teachers in the areas of instructional technology and deep learning. Melissa has served as technology director, instructional technology coach, and English teacher in various Chicago area high schools. So Melissa, thank you very much for joining us today. And as I mentioned, before we get into the meat of the conversation, I wanted to ask kind of a few, we'll call them 5-star questions for 5-star leaders, a bit of a rapid fire kind of personal introduction. So I'll ask these 5 questions. What do you prefer, beach or mountains?
Mountains, for sure.
Road trips or air travel?
Let's go with air travel.
All right. In-person meetings or virtual meetings?
Virtual meetings.
All right. Do you prefer salty snacks or do you have a sweet tooth?
I say both.
Okay, yeah. And then Twitter or Instagram?
Twitter for business, Instagram for personal.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And so now that we know a little bit more about you personally and professionally, why don't you tell us more about your district? Tell us about Glenbard.
Yeah, so thanks for having me here today. Really excited about this. So Illinois does school districts a little bit differently than a lot of other states. So we're a high school only district. We only have 9th through 12th graders. We have 4 large high schools, and we're in the suburbs of Chicago. And we have a pretty diverse population and just a lot of really passionate teachers and administrators. And yeah, it's a great district.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And then, so what the work that we've done together, I mean, it's centered around that profile of a graduate. Obviously, that's the topic of our event today. Why was it a priority at this particular time to dig into and conduct a profile of a grad study at Glenbard?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we've been doing a lot of work about moving towards deep learning, and our instructional technology professional development focuses a lot about that. So we became members of a group called Ed Leader 21 2 years ago. And we really were we joined it just to kind of find out more about the 4 C's of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, and how those are important for our students and how we can incorporate those in our curriculum in a more meaningful way. So we sent some groups to some of their conferences and really decided about a year ago that we needed to make some changes for our district in a bigger way. And so we started having some conversations about the pace of change and the future of work, and how we've been doing things pretty much the same for a long time with incremental changes, but not major changes. And the world we're preparing our kids for is just radically different from when I was in high school or other people are in high school. And so we're looking at trying to make some more meaningful changes around that work. So about a year ago, we decided that a profile of a graduate would be a good project for us to kind of frame this question of what do our students need. And so along with that, we really wanted to make sure that whatever changes we made, we had a lot of input from our community. So we feel like the profile of a graduate is a student-facing and student-centered vision statement for our district. And it just so happened that our vision statement is now 10 years old. So we had gone through this whole mission and vision process that involved lots of, I'm assuming, binders and committees 10 years ago, and it was really kind of time to do a refresh anyway. So we decided that if we wanted to do this, we should do it in a student-centered way. So we decided to do that about a year ago. And then we decided to partner with Thoughtexchange in the fall, just because we really wanted to cast as wide a net as possible to get as much input from our community about what they think our students need for when they graduate.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And there's a lot in there. I want to unpack into a few of those things. And one of the pieces that really always resonates with me, exactly as you said, and I've heard it stated in a few different ways at all the various conferences that I attend in the educational space, but that the jobs and careers that we're preparing students for now, the large majority of them haven't even been conceived of yet, right? So it's, what do we need to do to prepare our students for success in the future? So, and also I like the fact that it is a student-centered piece that you're working on as well. So maybe before we get much further into the work that we did, talk about some of the challenges that you've had just previously when you want to engage staff or students in the community in general, and how some of those were overcome.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, like to just talk about some of the challenges that you've had previously when you've been going out to engage the community.
Oh, sure. It's just always difficult to get really meaningful feedback. You can always do a survey. Like we survey our students every year about what they think of the iPad and what impact it's making on their curriculum. But there's just a finite set of responses that they can give. They're pretty much just multiple choice answers or a Likert scale. And so it's harder to really dig into how somebody really feels about something. And so that was what was really appealing to us about Thoughtexchange. We didn't want to go through this whole process and miss some big thing that our community, had a concern about or a passion about, and we didn't want to, spend all this time and money and thought about, developing this profile and having these meetings, and then have missed some major thing. And so it was important for us to have a really robust conversation.
Okay. And so maybe let's tell the audience, how specifically did you leverage and utilize Thoughtexchange for this exercise?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation about, when to use it and how best to use it. And I think there's, multiple ways to go about it. For us, we really wanted the broader community to inform our specific committee. So we formed a profile of a graduate committee, which has about 65 people on it. We have students, teachers, building administrators, district administrators, board members. And then we have a really diverse group of community members. So a lot of them are parents, but a lot of them aren't. We have business owners, religious leaders. We have people who are involved in local government. We are located near a major national laboratory. So we have someone from Argonne National Laboratory. We have an Army recruiter on the committee. We have people from our community colleges and local colleges. So we made this really diverse group of about 65 people. And they're meeting throughout the year to develop our profile of a graduate. But we wanted to cast that wider net. So the way we use Thoughtexchange is before that committee ever even met. They started meeting in January. In November, we launched a Thoughtexchange to our entire community. So every student, parent, we sent it out to Chamber of Commerce and local governments and every group we could think of that we had a mailing list and email for. We basically sent them our Thoughtexchange. And so we did our Thoughtexchange in November, and we got the results back before our first meeting. So our first meeting with our committee, we gave them our Thoughtexchange report. And we're like, we had over 1,000 people participate, and this is what they told us they think our graduates need. So that really started the conversation.
Okay. And what impact did that study have on the work of the committee?
What was interesting, because as the report came into us, it kind of validated a lot of the discussions we've already had. So I would say for us, there weren't really any big surprises that, something was important to our community that we weren't aware of. And so a lot of the skills we had already been talking about were really very, very important to our community. We've been doing a lot of work around the 4 C's. We've been doing a lot about social emotional learning and growth mindset. And those components all really came up in our report. So for me as an educator, it was really rewarding to see that the things we've been talking about in a meaningful way in our district for the past couple years were exactly what people were saying they wanted our kids to have. So that was really positive. And that whole report then went to the committee. And so at our first meeting, we had a lot of conversations about, the world of work and the pace of change, and that whole idea of these are the top thoughts that came up in our exchange, and they support this idea that our students need to be critical thinkers, our students need to be able to collaborate and communicate, and these are the things that really make us human, and these are where the jobs are going to stay, and so these are the things that are important. So it was very affirming to know that, you know, a lot of the things that we felt important, the community also felt were important, and we were aligned, which was great.
That is great. That is great. And I'm wondering, can you say a little bit about how, you know, often when we're working with district leaders on, you know, whether it is a profile of a graduate study or otherwise, it's that moment of, you know, vulnerability when you launch an exchange and you're getting the community to answer an open-ended question in their own words, and, you know, it's kind of being prepared to get the answer. Say a little bit about the vulnerability and how that felt when you actually launched the exchange.
Yeah, especially because we launched it to 8,000 high school students, and so you really like never know what you're going to get when you ask a bunch of high school kids what they think about, you know, something like school. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of nervousness. We did set it up so that we could, you know, moderate the exchange, and I have to say I was very surprised at how few posts were flagged. And honestly, the things that were flagged was like we had someone complimenting one of the principals. And so they mentioned them by name, so we took the post out. But it was really like, hey, this principal is a great guy. And so I felt like the exchange was very professional, and people were taking it seriously. There were not, you know, joke posts or anything like that. We had a lot of kids participate, and they were really very thoughtful about it. So there was a little nervousness, but I mean, really the conversation immediately started out very rich, and we had, I think, maybe 10 to 20 posts that were removed like out of the whole exchange, and really most of them were about saying something nice about a specific person.
That actually is great to hear. I mean, sometimes, you know, we do have to moderate conversations, but the fact that the ones you actually moderated at were compliments, that's great. But obviously sticking to that guideline of not naming individuals. But I mean, and I think also that's great, the fact that you went out to your student body like that, and the response was so constructive and collaborative that way. So I guess what if you could say how did Thoughtexchange really make a difference to your profile of a grad study? What would you say are the main points there?
I think the biggest thing is that it really gave us a lot more credibility, because we'd had 1,000 people give us their opinions about it. And so we have this committee doing this work, and there's only 65 people, which is actually a huge room full of people to work on something like this. But it's really nice to know that, you know, all of these other people gave their input too. And the fact that they were able to rate their opinions and really interact with each other in a pretty meaningful way. I think it just, you know, gave a lot more, you know, more people were involved in it, more people had eyes on it, more people are aware of what we're doing. You know, a lot of times we do something and we think we're putting out a big effort and all these people know about it. And then we unveil the final thing and everyone's like, what? You know, I didn't know you were going to do this. And so the fact that all these people participated in November in our exchange, when we finish our profile of a graduate in another month or two and launch it, hopefully people will be like, oh, that was that thing I did in November, and it's familiar to them. So it kind of promoted our project. It gave us that credibility because more people were involved, and it really, you know, gave us a lot of feedback and affirmation that we were on the right path.
Okay. And so going forward, how is the rest of the profile of a grad project going to play out?
So we actually have our third and final meeting in a few weeks. And we actually ran a little, spin up a little thought exchange for our group. We had a lot of discussions at our second meeting, and so we launched a mini thought exchange of just our group members to kind of continue the conversation. So hopefully we'll have a profile of a graduate at the end of this month, and we'll put the finishing touches on it, send it to the graphic designer, and get it approved by our school board. So we're looking to launch it for the coming school year.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear that you actually, like, you're continuing to use our platform, you know, as the study unfolds. And I wanted to also drill into a little bit, in addition to the profile of a grad work, what other aspects are you digging into using Thoughtexchange at Glenbard?
Yeah, we've used it in a couple of like in the room live meetings. we have a professional development advisory committee. It's kind of a big group that doesn't meet regularly, so there's not a lot of like great connections. I've got a couple talkers and a couple people who are really quiet, and I really wanted to hear from everyone. So we used the Thoughtexchange just to kind of get some opinions going and some conversation before we turned it over to like a verbal conversation. And so that worked well, because I know some of the quiet people participated in that exchange and got their ideas out. We had a department chair, and she had a situation where the department was not agreeing on something, and it was kind of a sticky situation. And so she used the Thoughtexchange in order to have a conversation with everyone anonymously. And she thought that was very helpful.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad to see that the platform is getting widespread use of the district. So I think what we'll do now is, we've kind of taken a broad sweep across everything. What we can do is launch an exchange and allow participants here to weigh in and ask any questions that they have for Melissa or myself. And so Amelia has just posted a link to that exchange in the chat window. So I'd invite you all to click in there and join the exchange, and we're going to be addressing some of the top thoughts and questions that come out of it. So you should see, as I said, Amelia posted a link in the chat panel there. If you click on that, that'll bring you into an exchange where you can ask Melissa and I some questions, any questions that you have for this conversation. So I'm going to wait for folks to come in there, and we'll deal with the questions as they arise. But one of the things I just want to say, you know, Thoughtexchange being a kind of special conversation, everyone gets very quiet because people are going into the platform and sharing their thoughts of others. And so for someone like myself, who's a bit of an extrovert and who likes to talk, it's tough because I want to fill the space. So I'm actually going to tell myself to be quiet for about 5 minutes or so as people come into the exchange and participate. We've had some good participation here in the exchange. As you can see, this visualization of the conversation growing. So why don't we actually dig into a few of these top thoughts here, and we can take up some of these questions.
Sounds good.
Just gotta move around a few things on my screen here. I've got some windows open. So the first one that I see here in a moment is, does the feedback you've received through Thoughtexchange differ from feedback provided by traditional survey information? What do you think about that, Melissa?
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference. So our question in our Thoughtexchange was, what knowledge, skills, and experiences will our graduates need to be successful in learning, work, and life, which is a pretty broad question. And so we had people approaching it from all different angles. If we had asked a survey, we would have had to, you know, pre-select what the possible responses were, and I think we would have been really limited in, you know, how many possible things people could have said is what was important for them. So we had lots of things that were, you know, combinations. You know, our top thought was collaboration and problem solving, which is, you know, two different skills or competencies, but, you know, they were rated as very important for lots of people. So that ended up being our top thought in our exchange. So the type of responses we got was very, very different, because it was really just, you know, people typing in, this is what I think our graduates need.
Okay, great. And then in the next one here, did you run more than one exchange to drill down into key priorities?
You know, we talked a lot about this before we did, because we wanted to get it right. We actually talked about having one exchange for our students and then one exchange for everyone else, because we were a little bit worried about what the kids would do. But we decided just to run one exchange. All of our participants were in it. And then I think that the report really helped us kind of decide, you know, what information we had. We did a lot with the theming tools within the Thoughtexchange report. And so basically all of our thoughts were assigned to a specific theme or category. So we could really kind of see how things were in relationship to each other as far as importance. So that was helpful for us.
Actually, I want to drill in maybe a little bit on that point you raised there with the theming that comes with the process. How did you find that, and how did you find working with that?
Yeah, it was interesting because like the auto theming, it kind of only goes so far, and so that was a good start. And we kind of debated because we really wanted it to just be like, Thoughtexchange told us this, but like some of the categories were, maybe combined or separate, and we kind of wanted to look at them a little bit differently. So we did kind of add to the theme categories and move things around a little bit, and then with our report, like a certain number were themed by Thoughtexchange, and then we actually went through. It was like winter break here and really quiet, and so my assistant went through and like assigned every single one of our thoughts to a theme because we had enough time to do that. So that was really helpful for us.
And can you say a little bit about how going through and actually examining the themes yourself and working with them helps you build familiarity with the conversation?
Yes, absolutely, because you really had to think, a lot of thoughts covered multiple categories and multiple themes, and so you really kind of had to make that call of which thing it resonated the most with, which is sometimes tough to do. But then you really kind of got the feeling, well, like communication, collaboration, and critical thinking were like our three like really major topics, and so they all were kind of related to each other and touching on each other. So it was helpful for me to see that.
Okay, great. I'd like to go into this question now here. How do you incorporate Profile of a Graduate into the classroom? Is there an impact on teaching and learning?
So that'll be year 2. We don't have a Profile of a Graduate yet. So we've spent this year making it. And so, the real trick here is what do we do with it once we have it? And so, as I mentioned before, we're part of Ed Leader 21, so a lot of the districts that we see when we go to their conference are, further down the road. They've developed their Profile of a Graduate. So, if we're doing it right, yes, it will impact teaching and learning. So we do a lot of big planning meetings at the end of May, beginning of June for like what our metrics will be for measuring success for the coming year, what our main goals are as a district. And so the timeline works out really well because we'll have our brand new Profile of a Graduate before we go into those meetings. And we anticipate that this will, have a pretty major impact. Okay.
I'd like to drill down to this one now. Is your Profile of a Graduate part of your district strategic plan?
Yes. So it basically will be our district strategic plan. We don't have a strategic plan in the sense that I know some other districts do. We have a mission and a vision, and we have value statements, and we have board goals, and we have metrics for measuring those goals. But this will basically kind of like lay on top of that. And so this will be our vision statement. We're in the process of creating a mission statement as well. And then all of our goals will be formatted around this.
Okay. I like this one now. How did you mobilize your committee around the highest priority thoughts?
I don't know if we did. Because I think part of the art of that committee is letting them, asking them difficult questions and letting them grapple with that and discuss that and coming to their own conclusions. So we gave them the report and we talked a lot about how, society is changing, that kind of stuff. And then we let them, think on their own about what they thought would be important for them. And we had those conversations all over again. So the question that we asked in our Thoughtexchange, I feel like that is the question we've all been talking about for several months.
And I actually want to chime in a little bit on that point there, because we often get asked, having to address like the top-rated thoughts, and folks kind of can interpret it as a bit of a vote almost. And this idea that we're not actually necessarily trying to democratize every type of process, but it allows you to see the landscape behind an issue, and then whoever's taking the leadership reins, in this case, your committee, your own Profile of a Graduate, they can decide what to do with the information from there and really address the points that they feel are important.
Right.
Okay, here's a good one. Melissa, what's your biggest piece of advice for districts when they use Thoughtexchange? Write
a really good question. Because that's like what it all comes back to. So I actually came across a school district in Pennsylvania that had done a Thoughtexchange with a Profile Graduate, and I was like, what is your question? And so we talked with them and kind of built on what they had done, and so we wanted to make sure that we were really asking the right question. We actually asked two questions. We kind of went back and forth on this. We had our main, profile of a graduate, what do our kids need question, and that's really what we wanted to get to. But we had a lot of discussion around, if you ask the public what they think, if they have something they want to tell you that isn't involved, with the thing that you're actually asking, they're going to find a way to say it anyway. If they have a beef with you, if they want to tell you something's wonderful, like they're pretty much going to do that no matter what. Excuse me. So our second question was, what do you appreciate about how we currently prepare our graduates, and how can we improve the way we prepare graduates for their futures? And so we asked that second question to kind of like let people have a chance to tell us the good things and the bad things. And so, I think that was helpful to some extent because we did get a little bit different feedback. But I also kind of wonder if we hadn't asked that question, if we would have had more thoughts or more ratings on the thing that really mattered. So it's probably a toss-up. I don't know if the second question was exactly right. We were lucky because we didn't have a beef. We don't have anything really controversial right now. There wasn't this, hot topic that people wanted to yell at us about. So that was good. But we maybe would have gotten a little bit stronger results off of having just one question.
Okay. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that feedback. This next question here, I kind of touched on a little bit. Maybe there's a little more color we can add, but can you share more on how you expect this to improve student learning and, more importantly, motivation?
I think it's going to really, I guess my personal hopes is that, the types of instruction we'll be doing will be focusing on developing those skills, which are not the kinds of things you see in a super traditional classroom. And I also hope that really it allows for more student agency, for students to really have a say in how and what they learn, which is a pretty major change from a traditional high school. And so that's kind of what I see being a likely outcome.
Okay. And this next one, how does Thoughtexchange help prevent groupthink? I'm wondering if the platform can create waves of thought that can take over the conversation. I know I have something I can weigh in on here, but maybe Melissa, I'll see what you think and maybe add to your response afterwards.
I think what's nice is that you do, people write their thoughts first and then see the other responses. So I think that initial thoughts that people put in, you definitely, get a fresh perspective. I always kind of wonder, do you have people who are going in every day and writing new thoughts and starring new thoughts? That's kind of a good problem to have, that people are so, passionate about your question that they're willing to come back and answer it again and again and again. But I always kind of wondered, is this the same people saying this stuff, or is it, new people coming in?
Okay. And one piece I wanted to mention on that is, for preventing groupthink, the idea that, because it is a confidential platform where folks can weigh in, in a safe space from whenever it's convenient for them. It's one of our partners calls it the anti-social media, right? And that it actually, unlike using a social media platform or even live in the room, you kind of strip away that social bias where people might be willing to kind of cow to the loudest voice, and kind of helps give rise to that silent majority. And I don't know if that's what you found as well, Melissa. But
yeah. It was a good experience.
We already touched on this maybe a little bit, but is there a plan to use the profile of a graduate, or how do you plan to use it for recruiting prospective students?
Well, we're a public high school, so we take everyone who lives here. So we don't really do any student recruiting. Everyone's just here.
Okay. And then I think we also touched on this as well. What exactly are your next steps in compiling the feedback you received in Portrait of a Graduate? Will you allow for multiple chances for input from the community after the initial data is available?
Yes, and so we're working right now on, once we finish the profile of a graduate, we're going to launch it to the community. We're going to make a little video about the process and what our competencies are that we decide on once we decide on that. And so we're really looking at kind of, like this point, like a marketing campaign for rolling it out to students, to teachers, to our community, thanking people for their input, and then making sure that everyone's really aware of this, because we think it's really important. I should mention too, if people are looking for other resources on Profile of a Graduate, we're part of Ed Leader 21. It's been an amazing group for us. It is something you have to pay for. If you're looking for free resources, MIT has a MOOC, a massive open online course that they run on graduate profiles. And I actually participated in it last spring. I think it's running again right now. It's just a free thing that anyone can register for. And they have a ton of resources on graduate profiles and why you would do it and why it's important and how you could go about, forming a committee and getting input from your community. And so if you're looking for resources, I would highly recommend that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that for the participants. I definitely think people should get in touch with Melissa to chat about Ed Leader 21 because that sounds really cool. Okay, we're getting down to some more thoughts here. So similar themes that you saw, were there any surprises?
I think that one of the surprises, personally, that I had is that there were quite a few comments about very specific things that kids need for life, like doing their taxes and changing their tires and just really specific things that I was kind of thinking oh, they're going to collaborate and that kind of stuff. And then people were putting in, they should be able to read a property tax bill.
That's great. I mean, I think some of those practical things are really important too. So I'm glad that they came up. How about this one? What methods did you use to share out information after conducting the exchange?
Oh yeah. So, we thought it was really important for our staff to be aware about this. And so we've been trying to communicate. We have about 550 teachers plus administrators on top of that. And then we have all sorts of support staff as well. And so we wanted to make sure that they were aware, A, that we were doing this profile of a graduate, and B, what this was. And so when we have our Institute Day events, when everyone's together from opening day of this school year, we were very much wanting to, let everyone know about this process. As soon as our Thoughtexchange report was finalized, we made sure that that went out to staff. We just had it basically put the PDF up as a link for people to go to, and so that was blasted out to staff multiple times. I did a January Institute Day in one of the buildings where I came and I talked to a whole school about our Thoughtexchange, and what was really nice is that we asked a few demographic questions in our exchange, which school building they were most closely associated with, what their role was, student, parent, teacher, community member, their gender, and their race. And so I was able to pull out the top thoughts for that school and show that to them as part of a presentation of, here are our thoughts district-wide. And then for everyone who is associated with Glenbard East High School, here's the thoughts that mattered most for your school community. So it was nice to personalize that.
Okay, great. So this one we've definitely touched on, student recruitment. Anything you didn't anticipate, we touched on that. So how did you actually get students to participate in the exchange?
That's a good question. So I was actually a little disappointed. I thought we would have had more kids participate. For those of you who work in schools, it's always a balance. There's always some sort of standardized test or survey or something that eats into class time. And so we did not really say, every English class is going to spend 10 minutes on this day kind of thing. Sometimes we do that. It just didn't really work out. So we encouraged students to participate. They got multiple emails encouraging them to participate. We had it on social media as well. And then we also encouraged teachers, if they had some time in their class, to allow, 10 minutes to have kids jump into the Thoughtexchange and participate. So it's clearly, if you can make them all do it at a certain time, you're going to get the best results. But we might have had, more nonsense as well. I felt like the kids who were participating were being genuine.
Okay, yeah, and that's really important to get that genuine and honest feedback. And this next one on, is there a way to open and end a conversation? I think that's something that I can take up offline. It sounds like more of a technical question about how the Thoughtexchanges actually work. So if anyone wants to learn more about that, I'll post my contact information at the end of this session, and you can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to discuss how that works with you. This next one's interesting. and I don't know if we can answer it here, Melissa, but we'll give it a try. How does data gathered by institutional research and or other internal information support or contradict the information in the Thoughtexchange survey?
I don't really know that we've collected any other internal data about this type of topic. So I don't really think I have a good answer for that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate at least us taking a look at it. And actually, you know, looking at the time here, I think what we can start doing is actually wrapping up now. We're kind of approaching the end of our time. So what I can do is we can respond to some more of these questions that we didn't get to after the exchange concludes here, after the presentation concludes. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And I also, just as I mentioned, I'm going to post my contact information here and Melissa's as well as we close out this session, just to say, you know, if you have any more questions for either of us, either Melissa on EdLeader 21 or any of the other initiatives that she's involved in, or if you want to learn more about Thoughtexchange, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. And Melissa, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and participating in this discussion. And I'd like to thank every participant who joined for participating and joining the exchange and sharing your thoughts. And I hope that it was a useful experience for you. And then I actually do have one little shameless plug on my end. My colleagues and I are going to be hosting a one-day professional development event in the Chicago area. So it's going to be on May 23rd, and it's open to any educational leaders who'd like to come. We'd love to have you come in and join the discussion. We're going to have some of our partner districts there as well, talking about Thoughtexchange and also you know, sharing best practices for professional development. And the whole event is going to be powered by Thoughtexchange. So, and I believe we have the event's May 23rd in Chicago. We do have another event, I believe, May 21st, and that's going to be taking place for our district partners out in the western side of the country. So if you want any more information on that, Amelia is going to be sharing it out. So I think we have 2 events that week. So once again, thank you all very much for coming. And Melissa, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.